There is a moment in every great rivalry where the distance between two men stops being about talent and starts being about ego, where the fight is no longer about who builds the better car or who wins the trophy or whose name goes on the magazine cover. The fight becomes about something older and more human than any of that. It becomes about a man who cannot look at someone he once loved and admit, even quietly, even privately, that the student has surpassed the master. This story does not begin with a fight. It begins with a photograph taken in Las Vegas in November 1997 at the Hot Rod Hall of Fame induction ceremony marking the 50th anniversary of Peterson Publishing. Two men standing side by side, both smiling, both dressed for the occasion, looking for all the world like they had just conquered something together. One of them is 53 years old, the other is 31. The older man built an empire with his hands. The younger man built it further with a pencil. Within 6 weeks of that photograph being taken, everything between them will begin to collapse. Within 9 weeks, the company will be on its way to one of the most catastrophic, most humiliating, most public bankruptcies in the history of American custom car culture. $15 million in debt, lawsuits, liquidation, vendors who had trusted them with their livelihoods wiped out entirely, and the two men standing shoulder to shoulder in that photograph, they will never speak to each other again, not once, not even at the end. Boyd Coddington did not stumble into greatness. He chose it with the kind of stubbornness that borders on delusion, and in his case, the delusion turned out to be exactly right. In 1968, a young machinist from Rexburg, Idaho, packed up and moved to Southern California with a plan that even the most generous observer would have called impractical. The hot rod was already being written off as a relic. The muscle car era had arrived, and Americans wanted power off the showroom floor. Nobody was supposed to be hand-fabricating 1932 Fords from scratch in a garage in suburban Los Angeles. Boyd Coddington didn't care. He took a night job at Disneyland, machining parts for the park's rides while the guests slept and the lights went dark. And he spent his days building cars. Every dollar went back into the garage. Every spare hour went into the metal. In 1977, he opened Hot Rods by Boyd in Stanton, California, and then did something nobody else in the industry had thought to do. He made the hot rod beautiful, not just fast, not just loud, not just rebellious. He smoothed the surfaces, eliminated the exposed hardware, and created what the industry came to call the Boyd look, a standard of cleanliness and elegance that redefined what a custom car could be. He won the America's Most Beautiful Roadster Award 7 times, a record that has never been broken. Then he invented the billet aluminum wheel, machined from a solid block of aluminum on a lathe, sold for $2,000 a piece at a time when that price sounded like a bad joke. People paid it. By the late 1980s, Boyd Coddington was not just a car builder. He was the car builder, a brand, a logo, a name that stood for something real and earned and irreplaceable in American automotive culture. 4 hours north in Santa Barbara, a boy was learning to draw cars in his father's custom shop. Chip Foose started sanding fenders and mixing paint at the age of 7. He had a gift that was, by any honest reckoning, almost unsettling in its precision. He could sketch a complete car from any angle without ever lifting the pencil from the page. He enrolled at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, the most prestigious automotive design school in the world, then had to drop out because his family could not afford the tuition. He spent 4 years working, saved everything, returned, and graduated in 1990 with offers from Ford, from Volkswagen, from the major design houses of the American auto industry. He was heading toward a glass tower in Michigan and a career drawing the future of mass transportation. But he had been doing side sketches for a guy down in Stanton named Boyd Coddington. By Foose's own account, he did that work for free for 2.5 years, never once sending an invoice. It was a hobby. It was love. When Foose finally told Boyd he was leaving for Ford, Boyd made him an offer that beat everything Detroit had put on the table. Chip Foose stayed, and in that moment, the two men became something that was never going to survive indefinitely. They became partners. For several years in the mid-1990s, Hot Rods by Boyd produced the most influential custom car work in the country. The Boydster, the Smoothster, the Boydster 2x. These were not just objects. They were arguments about what American design could be at its absolute best, and the industry agreed. But inside the shop, there was a quiet truth everyone could see and nobody quite said out loud. The cars wore Boyd's name. The trophies went to Boyd's wall. The magazine covers said Hot Rods by Boyd. But the hand drawing the cars, the eye driving the creative output, belonged to Chip Foose. The master received the credit. The student did the work. That arrangement can sustain itself for only so long before the weight of it becomes impossible to keep balanced. By 1997, Foose had been promoted to president of the company at 31 years old, making him the youngest inductee in Hot Rod Hall of Fame history. He stood next to Boyd in Las Vegas, and they smiled for the cameras. It looked like a dynasty beginning. It was, in fact, the last good photograph, because by that point, the company was already in serious trouble. When Boyd's wheels went public on the NASDAQ in 1995, the expansion that followed was aggressive, and the debt grew faster than the revenue. The specialty automotive market turned soft. Losses mounted. The board made the kind of decision that boards always eventually make. They removed Boyd Coddington as president and CEO of the company he had founded, dressing the removal in the polite language of a press release. 3 months later, Foose was named managing director. The son was now running the burning house. On January 30th, 1998, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy with $15 million in debt. By summer, the assets were liquidated in federal court. Small vendors, fabricators, paint suppliers, chrome platers, businesses that had extended credit and trust to one of the most famous names in their industry, discovered that the money owed to them was never coming back. Industry estimates placed that figure at over $5 million to small businesses alone. Chip Foose was the last man out of the building. By his own account, he made sure every employee had another job lined up before he left, and made sure every customer car still in the shop got transferred somewhere it could be finished. Then he walked out with his wife, Lynn, $700 in the bank, and a mortgage payment due at the end of the month. He started a new company called Feuds Design. Boyd Coddington never forgave him for it. The reasoning, assembled from years of industry conversation and public record, comes down to this. Boyd believed that Foose had used the Coddington brand as a launching pad, spent nearly a decade building a name under someone else's roof, and then walked out the moment that name became a liability. And what seemed to wound Boyd most was what came after. The people who had built his cars began to follow Foose out the door. Painters, fabricators, body shop supervisors, metalworkers. The craftsmen who gave hot rods by Boyd its reputation drifted one by one down the freeway to Huntington Beach. Every departure was a verdict. Every phone call from Foose's shop to one of Boyd's crew members was, in Boyd's mind, a form of theft, not of property, of loyalty, of the life he had built. In 2004, the Discovery Channel gave Boyd Coddington a television show called American Hot Rod. That same year, TLC gave Chip Foose a show called Overhaulin'. The contrast between those two programs became one of the most quietly devastating comparisons in the history of reality television. American Hot Rod showed a shop under constant pressure, missed deadlines, screaming matches, and a boss whose management style was best described as controlled explosion. Overhaulin' showed Chip Foose standing at a sketch pad, drawing a complete custom build in 2 minutes, calm and precise and entirely at ease, while a team he trusted transformed ordinary people's daily drivers into something extraordinary and then surprised them at the reveal. The warmth on that show was genuine, the craftsmanship was genuine, and across town on the other channel, the king of the American hot rod was losing his grip on his kingdom in front of a national audience.
The most remembered moment came when Boyd's body shop supervisor, Charlie Hutton, walked into Boyd's office on camera and told him he was leaving to work for Chip Foose. The silence before Boyd responded said everything. Then others followed, and then more. Inside the industry, it became a known pattern. Ambitious builders at Boyd's shop eventually got a call from Huntington Beach. They always took it. Boyd treated each departure as a death and maintained his silence toward Foose, absolutely. In a 2006 interview, Foose said only that Boyd had chosen not to have any relationship with him since he left the shop. 23 words. No bitterness, no anger. Just the quiet acknowledgement that one man had decided to end something and the other had accepted it and kept working.
Boyd Coddington died on February 27, 2008, worn down by diabetes and years of brutal production schedules and the grinding weight of watching someone he had mentored become the most celebrated custom car designer in the country. Chip Foose went to the funeral and said only kind things. Then he went home and kept drawing. Since 2008, he has won 4 Riddler Awards and 8 America's Most Beautiful Roadster trophies, surpassing Boyd's record and becoming by every measure the defining figure of his generation in American custom car culture. Boyd's last shop closed 4 months after the funeral. The empire is gone. The man who could have inherited it is still at his sketch pad. There is a pattern that runs through every creative field. The mentor who cannot survive the ascent of the student, who builds something extraordinary and then watches someone he loved build it higher. Boyd Coddington was not the villain of this story. He was a man who gave everything to build something magnificent and who could not find the generosity or the humility or the courage to say, "You are better than me, and I am proud of it." That silence cost him the last decade of his life, the friendship, and everything that photograph in Las Vegas was supposed to mean.